Looks like we've got everybody, and people are starting to file in. I think there it is. All right. I will hand it over to Paqui and let you introduce everybody.
Okay, so welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope everyone is gaining so much insights and so many diversity with all the speakers that we will have during those 2 days. My name is Paqui Lizana. I'm the global head of technology strategy at IKEA. But today I'm here with another role. I'm going to be moderating this incredible panel. As you have seen in other sessions, I'm also passionate about collaborating with people like with Jenny or with Brian Evergreen. Brian, by the way, I have here your t-shirt, but I thought that better color for today is red. But yeah, so fascinating by the intersection of human and AI, and I would like to introduce you now to our fantastic panel of experts. I think between all of us, we represent more than 3 different time zones from Dubai, Amsterdam, Spain, and US. And I had the pleasure to get to know all of you face to face before entering into this digital window. I would like to start with Katie. Hi, Katie, CEO and co-founder of Narratize, a company that is empowering businesses to harness the potential of AI and innovation and storytelling. Katie, it's a pleasure to have you here.
So thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. Can't wait to dig into the topics we have lined up. It's going to be an exciting and hopefully provocative dialogue.
Yeah, let's do it. Yago de la Sotilla, CEO of Glassy Films, an ad agency in Spain who is pushing the boundaries of AI-driven narratives. Yago, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us in this adventure.
Thank you, Paqui, and thank you everyone for inviting me to this super interesting panel. I'm very excited to talk with you about all these super interesting topics and happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Super. Helen Todd, the owner of the podcasting powerhouse Creativity Square, where she conducted more than 50 captivating interviews exploring the intersection of creativity and AI. Helen, I'm a huge fan of your podcast and all the wisdom that you share there. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me and appreciate you being a listener and fan of the podcast, and really excited for our conversation and everyone who's listening in. Hello from Cincinnati, Ohio.
And finally, Leopold Ajami, incredible coach, storytelling guru, founder of Nobel Philosophy Academy. Leopold, you don't know that, but when we were in Dubai having that coffee, I think that was the beginning for me to start thinking about doing something like that, doing this panel about the story. So thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you, Paqui. Actually, I want to celebrate you and raise a glass with you for putting us all together. So really, thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, and just 3 words about this, how we are going to do this panel. We will have several questions for all of you, and then we will invite the audience to select few questions for us, and then we will have a dialogue together. And finally, we will close the panel with some future thoughts. But let's start. I'm truly a believer that the stories rule the world. And of course, now with AI taking some of this plate, I'm so interested to know how working with robots, working with agents, working with these LLMs, culture and values of our companies will maybe move. So I would like to start the conversation with Leopold. Help us to understand in this world of computers writing stories, why stories are so important.
Okay, this is a big question, and the best way for me to answer it is to give you a scene from Castaway. I hope everyone here have seen the movie Castaway by Tom Hanks. And there's a specific scene in the movie that I love, which is Tom Hanks trying. So first, before the scene, you have to understand the context. It's like he's Robinson Crusoe. He's alone on a desert island, and he has two choices: to survive or surrender and die, right? So in this particular scene, he's trying to cut a coconut, right? And he tries everything. He uses force, he uses rocks, he throws the coconut, and he fails every single time. And he's desperate until finally he discovers a new approach to cut and peel off the coconut. And when he finally does it and open it and drink from it, it's like he's saying, I'm so happy. I want to celebrate that I was able to use my mind and survive, right? And later on, we see that he mastered the craft of cutting coconuts. Now, here's the thing. I could write a whole thesis on self-esteem and its relationship to survival, okay? But all you need is this one story to understand why this is all about self-esteem and survival. And I think that's the power of stories, right? So I want to put them in three categories. The first one is stories concretize abstraction. Okay, so if you think about it, we are conceptual beings and we understand the world through abstractions and through concept. And so stories allow us to concretize these abstractions, like love, like freedom, like evil, all of these into perceivable and understandable and emotionally connectable ideas, right? So from that perspective, stories are epistemological tools. We need them because they help us build the method of our knowledge. So that's the first one. The second one is stories, and this is like kind of a definition I'm working on based on that panel. Stories are dramatization of action. And I love this one because if you really think about it, that's what stories are all about. And unlike AI or machines, stories, or we as a human being, we have something at stake. We need to make choices in our lives. So machines don't have anything at stake. We have our lives at stake. And so stories select these important choices in our life and dramatize them for us, show us how to make better choices, right? And what are the consequences? So from that perspective, stories are ethical tools. So we need them to discover and design our own moral code. And lastly, stories allow us to reflect. Okay? And this is an introspective tool. So if you think about it, I could tell you the story of Castaway and the coconut, but if I say, Paqui, what coconut did you cut open today? Suddenly now you are reflecting on your own self-esteem and survival. Right? So in that sense, stories transport us and allow us to reflect. So that's why I don't think stories are essential. I think they are inescapable for us as human beings.
And I'm tempted to turn this into a whole workshop now. I think with all of us, we need more Leopold, more time with you. But I would love to hear what's the AI twist in this story. So I would love to turn now to Helen. And of course, I loved your particular podcast about Salvador Dali. But I would like you to share with us what excites you in this intersection of AI, narratives, and storytelling from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you. And I love what Leopold said. One thing I'll add on to the power of stories before dovetailing into my specific question is that like they connect us and they help us envision that which does not yet exist. And one theme through my podcast are so many guests are inspired by science fiction and the sci-fi that's quickly becoming reality. And it really doesn't surprise me, especially now that the technology is getting to where it's at, because the stories, whether they're science fiction or the example that Leopold shared, show us what can be, and they have the power to propel us to not only envision a better future, but to transform those dreams into reality and the future we want to live in. So I drink the Kool-Aid of the power of stories too. But when it comes to AI and storytelling, specifically from a creative and artist lens, my very, very first interview was with Harry Yeff, whose stage name is Reaps One. He's a world-renowned beatboxer and technologist, and he's actually beatboxed with his own voice before. And in our conversation, he mentioned that competitors are his best collaborators to push his craft even further. So it was like really interesting because he sits at such a large stage in beatboxing. The seat that he sits in, if beatboxing with his own voice was his biggest challenge. And his reply was, for every single person on earth, their greatest opponent is themselves. And it was such like a great mic drop moment that stuck with me. And why I mentioned that story is that some of the artists on my show have already started using language models based on their own corpus of data, but we're going to see more people and more artists using personal language models built on their own body of work to spar with and creatively propel us even further. And one thing that I really like about this, is that a lot of the large language models now were not ethically trained, which is something I'm sure has been talked a lot about. But this really takes the power back to the creators to leverage, expand, and create new works based on their own artwork and body of work in a really beautiful and exciting way. And another aspect of Gen AI that I'm really excited about is how quickly it can bring ideas to life. And what why ChatGPT took off like wildfire is that we can interact with it through natural language. And what's more natural than the oral tradition of storytelling? And as long as you can communicate an idea, you can now bring it to life, shortening that lag time of your thought or idea and bringing it into fruition. And one of the things that's happening is we're moving away from the information age and entering the imagination age, where it's less about what you can do or what skill you have and more about the power of ideas that you have. As long as you can communicate it, you can bring it to life with Gen AI. And Einstein famously said that imagination is more important than knowledge. And I think this is more true today than ever before. And like one example, the first time I ever got a demo of ChatGPT was in October of 2022 from a friend who works there, who was showing me the dog fooding version. And I'm working on a mini series. We put in the opening scene, and within seconds, the script and the actions were all displayed, captured my imagination, and it captured the world's imagination the next month, as we all know. But in the very near future, I'll be able to take my mini series and without a massive production budget, be able to bring it to life. And that's the third thing that I'm really excited about, is that generative AI is democratizing creativity, where you no longer need expensive production budgets, expensive camera equipment, whatever it is. As long as you can communicate your idea, you can bring it to life. So I'm really excited about all of the new stories and the new voices that we're going to hear from all around the world that will be popping up. And the last thing I'll share is my 50th episode was with Sam Jordan, who's a futurist, who works at the Amy Webb's Future Today Institute. And one thing that she shared is that it's easier to be pessimistic in maintaining the status quo about the future, because that requires you to take no action. Optimism is actually harder because it requires you to take action. And I think one of the most important questions we can be asking ourselves and each other right now is, what is this next story in human history? How do we want it to be? And how are we going to co-author it together and be proactive in that?
Wow. Okay. You said so many different things, but there is one thing that I would like to take on and moving to Yago, because you said that democratization of stories, of creating more things with less. So I would like now to introduce Yago, and maybe you want to share with us what are the things that you are doing today that was not possible before.
Yeah, totally. Actually, so interesting to hear all the approaches on this theme. I totally think that we enter some point there's no turning back. The use of artificial intelligence applied to the audiovisual industry is nothing, for my perspective, is nothing other than the democratization of like Hollywood special effects. No, thanks to the exponential advance of computational power applied to a specific software, as you mentioned. What we previously only saw in Star Wars, Marvel, Avatar, all that super blockbuster Hollywood films, we are now applying it at a tenth of the cost. It's so impressive, no? For example, at Glassy here in Spain, our main production company, we are using AI solutions through all type of projects. It's true that we are a company that we are very focused on innovation, and we always look the other way and try to find new ways of doing new things, and that's why lots of companies likes to work with us, because it's the way we think, no? And for example, from a small branded content video to a big international TV advertisement campaign, we use AI tools. No, for example, from 2 years ago, we started using like AI backgrounds. So we could create these unique backgrounds that if we had to film there or we have to travel there to film that, it was so expensive that now we're creating these backgrounds that not only we are simulating real places, but also we are creating unique places that never existed before, no? And in a really realistic way. Also, for example, now also we are creating nowadays people for backgrounds. No, we used to hire like 20, 30, 40 extras to fill in the background of a shot, where we need to maybe cross a street or be in the background of whatever, and the cost of managing all that people and putting it together and moving around and giving them food and taking them out traveling, all that was so highest cost. And now we can make these little people in artificial intelligence that they move like a human being, and they do the same role that we did with real people, and with more control over them. So that's a second like very powerful thing we are working now. And yeah, one of the most ambitious project that we are working on right now for an important American brand with more than 2 million followers on social media, whose name we cannot reveal for the moment. And it's a hyper realistic digital influencer that created with AI that will interact not only with the digital world but also with the real world. No, it's this new concept of digital influencer that opens new perspectives, new ideas, new possibilities. That is really, really interesting. So we're working on this new avatar that is speaking like a human, is reacting as a human, and I'm really excited on this project. I hope will be live very soon. You will know about it.
Okay. Yeah, super. Maybe later you can share a little bit more in the chat about your work, Yago.
Yeah, sure.
And I would like to continue the panel, moving towards what's the real value that we see for businesses. And for that, yeah, Katie, you were working with Narratize many years, and I think you have super valuable proof points about how AI is bringing different value into companies.
Definitely. So let's kind of talk about enterprise use cases and innovation strategies. I think if you look at the Q2 2024 Deloitte Enterprise AI Adoption Report, it showed that the number one value proposition that businesses are citing is the ability for this to drive innovation. But what does that actually mean, and how does that actually get enacted at scale? I think there's a power of storytelling in that. So when we hear about generative AI, most of us think of chatbots and assistant designs, so prompt engineering and preparing our workforce to prompt effectively. And even though this is an absolute breakthrough in terms of conversational experience, especially like Helen, you already touched on this so beautifully, the experience of working with a chatbot and having to prompt it to get you what you need is actually a bit inhuman. It's not exactly how we storytell effectively together. And so really, if we think about the way we as innovators and professionals communicate, ideate, build upon each other's ideas and write, it's much more natural for it to be a back and forth dialogue instead of a one-sided experience where we have to tell the other entity what we need from it all the time. And so our story, Narratize, is the trusted AI co-author for innovative enterprises. And our vision is that we support the enterprise in moving from the initial seed of an idea all the way through its message market fit. And I'll share some enterprise case stories that we've seen as more and more companies adopt this technology at scale. And I'll share the way that we've enabled the large language models that Narratize is built upon to generate not just higher accuracy, but in a story-rich and story-infused way to help spark innovation. And so if you kind of envision the chatbot experience, Narratize is a bit of the reverse of that. It's an AI that prompts you. So when you log in with an idea, with a personal experience that you'd like to shape into a potential project plan, or when you've recognized an opportunity for innovation, whether you were researching a white space or you were you accidentally discovered a possibility, right? No matter how innovation is sparking, Narratize starts asking you questions to pull your best ideas. And so I think that was really the first question that we asked was how, and I think it's the question that we hear so many of our enterprise customers putting first. How can we innovate faster using this technology? And how can we ensure that what our teams are outputting are accurate and high quality in a way that actually helps us to evaluate ideas and move them forward and really listen in a two-way conversation to our people, our consumers, and to the markets. Let me share a couple of ways that some enterprises are working with tech like Narratize to do that. So at Boeing, which of course is a global aviation company, their product development teams are using Narratize to articulate concept notes, pitches, proposals, project plans, and share updates along their innovation journey. So again, really helping to move from the first front-end innovation concept into the various gates and checkpoints of the stage gate process. And they're tracking a 60x value on the time that they're spending in those product launch processes. Similarly, we work with Cal. They're the makers of Jergens, Biore, John Frieda, some of the home care brands that we know and love today. And they're using Narratize. They're starting within their research and development organization. And they're really starting to think not just about artifact and documentation workflow builds, but also about the innovation stories that they collect, the way that they learn from each other as R&D chemists and formulation scientists. So they're using Narratize to create things like challenge stories, failure stories, lessons learned, and they're starting to build in after action reports and project reflections into the way that they work through projects. So all of this really, it's not just about effective storytelling. It's actually at the root of it about tacit knowledge sharing and building upon all of the rich insight that gets passed on in the stories that we tell each other inside of our organizations. And therefore, that opens up a whole new world that I think threads really beautifully to the way that you started us, Leopold, which was this is about ultimately influencing and building value systems and culture. If we can see this technology not just as an ability to generate things, but to listen and to collect and hear each other's insights and infuse the way So like, for example, infuse the way that we prompt with our organizational values and our culture and our ways of defining innovation and how we want to continue to grow as an organization. That's some of the richness of what's possible when you kind of think outside the chat bot and you start to imagine other user experiences with this tech. And happy to share more examples. I think another couple quick ones, just at Under Armour, they've always had an idea house, and it's a space where any person, any consumer, my mom, your dad, anyone can log in and pitch an idea to Under Armour. And their innovation team will read that idea and they'll contemplate it as part of their front-end evaluation process. So they get thousands of ideas every year. But those ideas differ, as you can imagine, in quality and in what UA can actually innovate against. And so the use case there is, how might we actually use the prompting features in Narratize to capture the stories of innovation and the ideas in a way that's more streamlined, higher quality, and that helps prompt people to share the ideas that are going to be most relevant to Under Armour. And so those are some of the possibilities and some of the values and strategies that we're hearing enterprises use to adopt Gen AI into their culture.
I love that.
Well, okay, Leopold, maybe you can help us to close this round.
Actually, I want to comment on something that I think is powerful. Yeah. Katie said, which is, it's not natural for us to prompt.
Yeah.
I love that. I wonder if it should be by now natural for us to prompt. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think we take the process of prompting implicitly, right? So, for example, if we're crafting a story or trying to solve a problem, the process in our mind is a conversation between me and myself, right? Like, it's implicit. I'm not seeing the framework by which I'm building, let's say, that story. The prompting process, at least for me, from a very humble experience, is teaching me how to systematize my thinking, how to come up with a framework by which I say, so I need these steps in order for me to create a story. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So Leopold, what's so wild? So we spent the last decade studying narrative algorithms inside of the enterprise, meaning what are the patterns that show up when someone pitches a concept for a systems improvement versus trying to paint a picture of a future state. So like this gets into some of the sci-fi use cases that Helen is describing. Like, what's the narrative pattern that's more effective and helpful when someone is saying, here's what the world will look like in 5 years, and therefore we're innovating in these ways to get there. And we trained Narratize based on those story frameworks and patterns. So I think I love what you're saying. What's wild is we hear the same thing, where actually in Narratize, users are spending more time thinking and innovating than they are prompting. And so I think today, you're right, like people will continue to get better and better at prompt engineering, but it will always produce variable outputs and everyone will prompt it differently. And there's a beauty in that. We'll all prompt it differently. We'll all get various outputs because of it. And I think some of the questions to ask are, what happens if we do, in certain circumstances, need to maintain quality, need to maintain a streamlined framework upon which folks can articulate that? If you start with framework, then people can spend more time thinking about how they would answer that great question instead of thinking, how on earth am I supposed to prompt to get this out? I love this.
Yeah. But as any technology, I think all technologies shifts the way we think in the end, and especially this one that, at least for myself, is living so close to me, to my thoughts. So this is so interesting, and I would love now to take the poll. As you can see, there is a clear winner, which is the first question. We will need to maybe spend, and now I'm going to be a little bit strict, I don't want to say that, but maybe take 1 or 2 minutes to develop your answer. But as you can see, this is the first question, which is, I think we all agree that storytelling is super powerful and is needed, and we will still have it with or without AI. But will AI powered storytelling forever blur the sense of reality? And I would like to start again with Leopold, maybe. Yeah.
I love this question, but it's in my mind, it's a bit loaded. In a sense, every time you tell a story, you are blurring the sense of reality, right? Because what you're doing conceptually is you're selecting something from reality again and you're dramatizing it. And here I'm talking about stories as an art form. So this is a very important point because we tend to use stories, for example, like from journalist story, right? Like journalism is something else. I'm talking about stories as an art form that can develop into brand stories and business stories, right? So in a sense, yeah, it can and it will. But from another perspective, how many times we blur our sense of reality without even AI? How many people still believe that the earth is flat, right? Which is an evasion of reality. So I think it all goes back to us. It depends on us and how we deal with it. So yeah, that's my quick and short answer.
Who wants to follow? Who wants to continue? Maybe Helen.
Yeah, I can jump in. I'm really glad that this one was selected. I'm going to answer it from a different perspective. We've already experienced misinformation and disinformation online and bad actors manipulating online that's impacting real world scenarios. I forget if it was 2016 or 2020 or both, either the George Floyd or the Trump elections, where Russian bad actors were creating fake Facebook groups in the US that were prompting real people to counter protest and stuff. So with AI being able to scale and create so much more content faster, you probably already see in your feeds, like, is this a real image? Is this a real story? But the bad actors is what we should really be paying attention to. And this year is one of the most consequential election years of our lifetimes, because I think half the globe is going to national elections. And one thing that Amy Webb said in her 2024 South by Southwest keynote, which I highly recommend, is like, we're going to see not only fake news and fake content, but potentially whole fake events where it's not just one piece, but fake video and fake press and all of this stuff. So, what's actually happening in the world with a lot of the bad actors at play, we should all be very skeptical about what we see online. And if it triggers like a very emotional response, to take a beat and really go back to reliable sources to source out what's happening. And even journalists have fallen for bad, AI stuff before, but we should all be more diligent than ever when it comes to news in the world, especially this year, more so than most, because of the elections and the lack of needed regulation on this front too, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, narrative has so much power, right? At the end of the day, like, there's so many amazing texts and analyses that point us to narrative persuasion and narrative power can take hold of reality. Yago, I know you had some thoughts on this space too.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I totally agree on that. And yes, in some way, actually, my question was like, why are we so sure that we will prefer the real thing than the AI generated sense of reality? No, one thing is what we say in public, and the other sometimes very different what we really watch or do when nobody sees us. No, so if AI generated storytelling gains market share, meaning that we start liking a little bit of that new worlds that we are creating, it could be perfectly some sort of reality for many people, no? So I will not be so scared maybe on what really we could like in the future, more or less. No, so that's my point.
Yeah. Well, so interesting perspective as well, and I think some of you know that I started to explore AI with my grandma, recreating her memories, like revisiting her like not so good moments in her life, and then go together, revisiting common memories, and then imagine what the world could be. And now I have all these gallery of memories with her that, of course, are artificially created, but it connects to my grandma into very different level. And when I share that with them, with my grandma, it's like, yeah, I really go to that place. I really remember what happened. So I'm just curious to see with evolution of this technology, of course, now we can create movies right away from that pictures, but maybe in the future, I don't know, maybe I will be able to smell those memories. So it's quite amazing the type of realities that will be able to create. It's scary, but also at the same time, it's also super amazing what we will be able to do.
You know what, Paqui, I want to say something quick here, which is when I saw it in my mind, it was a bit relaxing. In a sense, everything is artificially created, except nature, except the given. But everything is artificial. Like the only difference is now we have like another brain that we're using, right? But everything in life is that's where the word is coming from, as in man-made or created by a human. So that's kind of relaxing.
I'll add something really quick. Jason Schneider, who was on my show, he's like, every expression, whether art or otherwise, is trying to capture the totality of our consciousness, but it's all representative. Like nothing, no matter how extensive of the art, can't capture the totality of our conscious experience. So therefore, everything is representative, which I think kind of follows what you're saying, Leopold. But I know we're quick on time too, so
No, I was hoping we could get to emotion AI. I did put a link in the chat to Reina's book, which is amazing on some of these. Like on the flip side, how might an ethical AI and emotion AI framework help us kind of flip the script on how we design and use this technology? I love this question of like, what might happen if we enable this technology to collect stories at scale, to hear each other differently, and ultimately to share with us windows into worlds that we couldn't reach through ethnographic research, and certainly that nobody cared to fill out a survey about. And so there's this other way, if we design it to prompt others and pool their ideas and see them in one space. I get excited thinking about the alternative realities, that not alternative realities, the actual realities, the actual pains, challenges, and ideas that are coming from humans who are not within our reach today, as if we could possibly get more connected. Guess what? We still can, because how many people around the world do you have access to their stories at your fingertips to help you innovate against and with them and connect to them?
Yeah, I agree. But that was amazing. I mean, to hear all of you. We are 1 minute left. I would like us to maybe close that panel. If you want to say like 1 or 2 words about what is for you the future of storytelling.
Yeah, I will jump in real quick. I think we are unlocking new perspectives, new worlds, actually, new points of view. I am so excited of what is coming thanks to AI. I think that will for sure enhance human creativity. People say that maybe AI is killing the creativity. I think totally the opposite. This is unlocking so many new ways of thinking and new ways of seeing the world that will be enhancing human creativity at another level.
I say 1 word, Yago.
Oh, sorry. 30 seconds. So sorry. Good.
I'll just repeat Sam Jordan's quote of like, be optimistic, but optimism comes with action, and that we're all co-authoring and co-creating the future, and that we need to be very intentional, whether you're building the tech to do it ethically or the stories that we're telling and the narratives that we're sharing.
Mic drop, 3 seconds. Thanks, everyone.
I think that's the end, Helen. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
That's great.